I just wanted to share with you that recently I got a fortune cookie, and it said something I thought was actually appropriate for what Chris just said. It said, think, live, and act today, for tomorrow may be too late.
That's me, fortune cookie wisdom.
Winston Churchill said, the farther back in history you go, the farther forward you're likely to see. What he meant was that if we don't learn from history, we will repeat it. Every election cycle, we're told that the votes are between the left and the right. But I often hear that there's no difference between the political parties. And as time goes on, it becomes more and more of a truism. You see, during World War II, the isms that many great Americans of the greatest generation, of which I know there's some here today, gave their lives in some cases to halt, are literally now progressively being implemented here at home. In this, the new entitlement society, the free will of the people give way to the propagandized need of the masses. They are persuaded by promises of more and more free stuff. Freebies that get the political elite reelected in the next cycle. The free stuff is achieved through a perception of mob rule. Through propaganda, they take wealth from successful individuals and give it to the majority of the subjects by way of a perceived electoral mandate. The ruling class carefully manipulates us in a practice of government commonly known as the progressive redistribution of wealth. First it was a progressive taxation, then the so-called Great Society, a series of projects that expanded the leviathan of government, making the masses progressively more and more dependent on government handouts. A redistribution scheme that effectively reversed our founders' vision, where the government was to serve the will of the people, to that where the government dictates its will upon its subjects. With Obamacare, the latest progressive entitlement, you could argue that we have regressed backwards towards the logic we faced during revolutionary times. A time where rulers' law preempted natural law, a time where the will of the majority of its citizens opposed the new tax, a time where the will of the administration now supersedes the right of the individual. But instead of a king, we have a tyrannical administration. Do you agree? Yeah. Instead of a T-tax, we have an Obamacare taxation. We're reliving another period of American history, that of taxation without true representation. Therein lies the rub. That is the responsibility of every generation to stay aware of what is true and that what is just, to vote correctly in each election or suffer the consequences of their misdirected choices. In 1936, Al Smith, then part of the Democrat leadership, said that he was leaving the party because the party of Jefferson, Jackson, and Cleveland was taking our great country down the road of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin. Nikita Khrushchev, who became the premier of Russia, spoke of a change of strategy when dealing with the U.S. That under the final ultimatum, the U.S. would voluntarily surrender their freedoms through progressively subversive tactics that would weaken us from within, spiritually, morally, and economically. In 1964, perhaps his most notable speech, A Time for Choosing, Ronald Reagan warned us about such folly. He said, "We have a rendezvous with destiny, but that destiny is of our own making." Ronald Reagan spoke of two paths, one towards our founding fathers' vision, and the other was that of Norman Thomas, a six-time candidate for president under the Socialist Party platform. If Barry Goldwater became president, it was said, he would have stopped the advances of socialism in the United States. But Barry Goldwater lost as a direct result of negative advertising campaigning, best known as the Daisy commercial. The progressive strategy was to take on one or both parties down the path of the Labour Socialist Party of England. In doing so, it didn't require expropriation or confiscation of private property or business to impose socialism on the people. Under this strategy, you could still hold deed to your business or your property, but the government would hold the power of life and death over that business or property through extensive rules and regulations, and yes, oppressive taxation. The government could then find some charge, any charge, to bring against a concern that it chooses to prosecute. A perversion of the free market where the government controls business through the fear of harassment and sometimes, and oftentimes in the future, passive acquisition. A strategy where the property owner's natural, unalienable rights become the dispensation of the government. Under this form of oppression, it's no wonder that motivation diminishes and economies fail. So it is the issue of every election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon our founders' vision and accept that some government bureaucrat in a distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them for ourselves. An election is not just about right versus left, but rather a selection process whereby we choose the right candidate and reject the wrong candidate. So we must be informed if we're to make the right decisions. And that is where Trevor Loudon comes in. Trevor has seen the fall in his own country to progressive ideals and recognizes the essence of what Reagan said, that America is the last great hope. Trevor is doing the job that our media used to do. He's a watchdog for American truth and justice, a defender of freedom and liberty. He exposes the wrong and defends that which is right. Trevor understands that the fall of America would have devastating effects globally, that forces of evil are poised at this very moment to infiltrate and divide and conquer. He is a founder and blogger of New Zeal, author of the book Enemies Within. Jenny Thomas of the Daily Caller named him her favorite interview of 2013. He's been called an amazing edge-of-your-seat speaker that comes all the way from New Zealand to protect and defend the United States against its enemies from within. Please welcome Trevor Loudon.